there's no word for it, forwards and backwards in time at the same time, and it's just there's no word to actually describe
It's
it.
like we're
So,
in some kind of combination of Travelers and Fringe.
uh, which one is Travelers? That show. Well, it's actually exactly that. They're all
Yeah,
straight from the bases.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
all,
Like I was, I like when I saw that, I'm like, wait a sec. Like I was like, that's what I'm doing, right? I was just like, I was just like, oh, wait a second, this is what we're doing. We're here and we're trying to reassemble the team. Once, you know what I mean? Like, oh, okay, it was very clear. You know what I mean?
and that's what the show is for, to help people remember. What did we just say a little bit of? Well, before I go too far, the so the way about the shape, the multi-layered, extra-dimensional toroid in motion, which is basically just the angles activated.
Right.
What I was going to say about that, but didn't, is that and it's easy to compare to a computer system or simulation in the sense, I'm not sure exactly where I deviated from there, but at least a computer system simulation, where you have, if you could map out what we're doing here, you have the three-dimensional version where it's like two figures communicating. You're in your time locale and space locale, and I'm in mine. And then there's information to describe the data required to orient our physical selves, and then the amount of information that we're using to communicate in reference to how much information, the information of the words are actually in reference to. So when if you say, bottle, it's like, okay, bottle or something. But if you say sun or solar system or something like that, okay, there's more information wrapped up, but there's the same amount of data in the physical realm. It's just vibrations. And so that has to be mapped out in some way, because if we can conceive it, it has to exist. And so the overmind is both what we're doing physically as well as what we're conceiving, conceptually in mind. And so you could look at it like code, but that's like the computational version, that's how a computer would see it. But if you could see it in actual space, you'll end up with these kind of geometric formats, kind of like a wallpaper or something, where there are angles that are split up in different ways of relating the information to other pieces of information to create basically a universe, and it's a universe of information.
Yeah.
You have the whole thing, eventually it looks like one of those flappy toroid things, and
like the stuff she paints, like the stuff Aurora paints. Yeah.
right, and so then any given moment or situation is going to have some portion of that layout in some type of self-referential geometry to describe the amount of information is being conceived or represented in relation to the entire universe, or the whole of creation at once. And remember, it's also self-referential to how much you're talking about what you're feeling at any given moment, because we are self-referential images of the whole of creation into each person, each awakened person, each being. And but that's like the basis of how, if we're computers, we literally see like Terminator lines of code and things like that, and it would just be set up at like columns, or how that would be the complexity of like columns. And then if you take that layer by layer back and forth, you'd have like sometimes when they have like these cube setups of codes in like movies, or it'll be like a fractal, like holographic code. And the point is with the what it's actually, without going with the computer, what it's just in higher space. Basically, it's spaces within spaces, and the information aligns in certain ways, and you get like, they look like star maps or something.
It's like a spiritual biological technology.
If you're looking at it doesn't have to be technology, but nature can be technology in itself.
Right. That's what I'm talking. Yeah.
Ultimately, it's a diagram, or an extra dimensional. What is the word? The word of information being converted into visual space. I can't think of the word right now, but it's basically like that. And so seeing that, though, because that's happening in a person's mind who's actually visualizing the information and how it creates a type of geometric layout in
right.
space.
That's what I see in my like I've looked at lots and lots of like sacred geometry and fractal and mandala and all this kind of like hyperdimensional art, and I haven't seen anything that so exactly maps out what I'm seeing as hers. And she told me she takes like a lot of these other artists who do similar kind of stuff. They just like sort of do the sacred geometry, make it very colorful. She actually maps out and calibrates everything using like octave and vortex kind of math kind of structure to do it. So it's actually very precise. Like there's a point about everything she's doing, and she starts with this very basic kind of thing, and things become increasingly more complex and whatnot. It's quite fascinating. But every little point that I can see in my visual space that I've never been able to describe, like she doesn't miss any of it. And all of the other artwork I've ever seen like that, it's missing some part. It's missing some of the information. It's like, how digital loses some of the information as compared to analog. It's like hers is the analog and the other stuff is like the digital. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I'm describing. The computer can get a digital or even holographic layout, and it's always going to convert what is an actual, in this case, not a space because it's hyper or cyberspace, so that converts to experiential, meaning it's feeling, it's experienced.
Yes.
Whereas it's going to convert that into a grid-like Cartesian layout or a holographic, like cuboid, some structure that compresses it, it squares it to make it computational. Whereas, and it fits into a specific set of numbers. With the numbers have to have a base system, and with the computing, it doesn't match with the the number set for nature, or at least the actual nature, which is extra dimensional.
So isn't it? So I think like the computing part is like a closed system, where this is like an open, expansive system.
Yeah, it's analog in terms of like a clock being the gears, whereas digital, it has to be on the chip. The gears are the system. The information is the system itself. Digital, the chip is a representation and is coded within that, but you can't look at the chip and count up how many numbers are in there to make sense of it. The information is obscured, abstracted, referenced in another. It's literally in another plane. Whereas what is actually happening, if it were an analogous, or at least analogous to being analog, is a weird way to say it. It's you can't see it now because we have an organic bioprocessing system of the brain that's making it hyperspatially digitized, which is like the holographic mind. But if we could, had brain surgery or something to see just what it is without our physical eyes and senses, there would be big energetic waveforms and geometric patterns through the air that would be describing literally two beings sitting here communicating in a space relative to other spaces, and it was all mapped out according to that. And the idea is that the actual waveform, if you look at it, you count it up, whatever, you get the actual end result of what's going on. It's not obscured or hidden behind some other abstracted plane. We're literally that plane put into a system that constructs an imaginary plane, and we're consciously looking at the imaginary plane, but our feeling is never left the actual experiential plane of feeling where it's all pure energy.
Yeah.
So we're like the ghost in the machine, the soul, the spirit in a soul, and the soul in a body, and the body wrapped up into the brain and the mind, and the conscious mind stuck in an abstract plane that these sensors and systems are actually doling out through big generators and what could be looked at like mind control systems, but it's just like saying a clock is a mind control system as long as you look at it and format your life according to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything's a metaphor.
Yeah. But it's a true metaphor.
It's a true metaphor, and they've got it so down that every time the clock ticks, whether it's digital or whatever, they can actually make a person's brainwaves snap to that. Now, that's an abridging of free will. So if that happens, it's basically a case of cosmic war. And that's why you see people offering people like, we'll give you this and that if you want to come live your life like this and work this way and adhere to these values. It's basically an option, but with the technology, there's a way to basically entrain a person. But it's never done just because.
Right. Have you seen those Rolex? I think we talked about this once before. Those Rolex commercials with Roger Federer, the tennis player, where it said he's walking through like the Tennis Hall of Fame and looking at the pictures, and he's the voice is saying, "Rolex, we don't just record history, we create it." And he's walking. Yeah, have you seen those ones? Yeah, like the whole like this is my question. Like maybe you know the answer to this, maybe you don't. Is Roger Federer, is what he does here, is he like representing time? Is he representing like what like is he that sort of what do you call it? Like the archetype is for time. Like I don't know what I'm trying to get out what I'm saying
It
here.
works by association and character, like role playing and symbolism. I can't think of. I feel like there's a block there too, but you could look at